we read.
I'll start off, make a comment just about the chapter number. This is a Surah 12, and Joseph had 11 brothers. It's just interesting that connection um, between the two. And then also this expression, you see it always after initials. These letters are proofs of this profound scripture. What's funny is most people who translate this verse, the word ayat means verses, but in the Quran, it almost consistently means signs. Um, and they think that they translate as these are verses of this profound scripture. But again, this is actually in reference to the letters. Um, and the aspect is if you use the proper translation where it says, these are proofs of this scripture, it's referencing, what's immediately before it. And this has to do with the Quran's, numerical combination. Um, just did a blog. I pulled up all the verses. Yeah, these letters are proofs. Oh, timely. I'll put it in. But it's interesting that you see this only with the initialed verses, and also three times in the Quran when the challenge is made, to produce a surah like these or produce 10 surahs like these. It's always in the initialed chapters. Um, so I just put that in the VC.
Okay, so I'm putting it in VC1-chat. It's at the bottom of what I just shared. It says Quranic challenge. Additionally, the Quran's challenge to produce a surah like it is only found within initial chapters 223, 1038, and 1113. In this one, we have chapter 12, verse 1, ALR. These letters are proofs of this profound scripture. In verse 4, it says, Joseph said to his father, I saw 11 planets, the sun and the moon, prostrating before me. But how does a planet prostrate? What does that look like in a dream? I don't really understand it.
There's another verse that talks about, the stars and the trees and stuff prostrate. One of the ways that I think about it is that it's all perfectly according to God's timing. If you go to chapter 17, verse 12, right? Because God says, like, basically, like our bodies, they're prostrating because they follow God's, perfect design. They do exactly as they're commanded. Like, I can't change, the way my cells replicate. Like, this is something that's not within my personal control. And if you look at 17:12, it says, "We rendered the night and the day two signs, made the night dark and the day lighted, that you may seek provisions from your Lord. This also establishes for you a timing system and a means of calculation, thus explain everything in detail, like the precision in the orbits of the planets, the Earth, the Sun. It's something that is fully submitted to God. It cannot deviate from what God has decreed for it. And in that, my understanding, I mean, that's what prostration is. That's what is depicting.
Peace be upon you all, brothers and sisters. Yeah, mashallah, this is good comments from me. I just wanted to add, yeah, that's how I understand it as well, that it's in this context, the prostration is following God's design. And so we have, I was reminded of this verse, 36:40. The sun is never to catch up with the moon. The night and the day never deviate. Each of them is floating in its own orbit. So these entities that they're submitters, they didn't accept the freedom of choice. They're already submitters and they're exactly following the design that God provided for them, and they never deviate versus the human being that, mashallah, was said, our body is submitting. However, what the human does with the body is not always submitting. And recently we had the discussion about law and homosexuality, and that's an example of transgressing God's design. God's designed us to biologically in a certain way for reproduction to happen, and then people transgress that design. Yeah, wanted to share that. Thanks.
Wanted
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, Douglas.
I would like to simply add that verse 4 and 5, this is not astrology. I this is not denote astrology. This does not in any way suggest the idea that the position of the planets or the stars somehow dictate my destiny. You all are familiar with what I'm saying. I just want to clarify that this is not astrology. Where we have a lot of in the popular culture, people talk about, well, what sign are you? Are you Aries? Or are you Gemini? Or this in no way is related to that belief. Thank you.
A reminder. I wanted to share. This is just talking about the orbit. There's this. I wish brother Said was here. He likes palindromes in the Quran. So in the verse 21:33, it says, "He is the one who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon, each floating in its own orbit." If you look at this expression, "Kul fi felak yasa bihun," this is it's a palindrome, right? So when it's talking about floating in orbit, that the kaf, corresponds with the kaf, lam with the lam, fa with the fa, and then the ya in the middle, um, signifying kind of the same aspect of the orbit. Um, there's also another interesting connection. Verse 6 says, "Your Lord has blessed you, has given you good news through your dream. He has perfected his blessings upon you." And this happens in verse 6, and it's just interesting. It's the 6 is the first perfect number. And I'm going to put basically the definition, a thing. So a perfect number is a number where the sum of its divisors equal the number. In the case of 6, 1, 2, and 3, if you add those together, you get 6. So it's just interesting. I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, this is by design per se, but it's just an observation.
Um, Sorry, brother, dude, can you? I didn't catch that. Can you repeat that? Which verse was the Arabic and that you were referring? Was it that
I made
3640?
no,
Yeah.
two comments. So the first one was the palindrome. So if you look at 21:33, I put an image there just to show.
Okay.
When
Okay.
it says each floating in its orbit, the each in orbit for the Arabic, it forms a palindrome as if it's like orbiting around one another.
Ah,
And then
cool. Okay.
uh, and then the other one was just verse 6 that it says that he has perfected his blessings upon you, and it happens in verse 6. And 6 is the first perfect number that we have.
It's perfect because why is it perfect? Sorry.
The definition of a perfect number is if you get its divisors. If you add them together, you get the number. So the divisors of 6 is 1, 2, and 3. And then if you add 1 plus 2 plus 3, you get 6.
Ah, okay. Cool. Mashallah. Thank you.
Okay. Do we want to? I think we've reached some interesting observations recently regarding the concept in verse 2. So in verse 2, it says, "We have revealed it in Arabic. We have revealed it an Arabic Quran that you may understand." And at least for me, the understanding that I've been reaching recently is that the Quran was, clear, without ambiguity, and just accessible pretty fully for the people of that time, meaning that it used language that was clear to them, that was accessible to them. And I think that's an appropriate position because the Prophet Muhammad didn't explain the Quran. So it has to be in a way where the 332 times Prophet Muhammad is ordered to say things, it has to be clear and concise. Whereas today, because we don't speak the 7th century Qurayshi classical Arabic, right, we have a representation of the original Quran in English, for example, right? So it's not the same thing. But this is what we have, and this is appropriate for us to be able to benefit from and learn from and access. And even then, we can still look at the Arabic and derive different, conclusions and learn stuff. But for the people at that time, I think it's fair to say that the verses had to be clear. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't. And God says in multiple verses that, for example, 39:28. I'm putting that in the chat. It says an Arabic Quran without any ambiguity, that they may be righteous. Now, if I read it in English, or if I try to examine certain things today, there is ambiguity. But this means that the Arabic original language didn't have that situation. There wasn't confusion about, is it wash your feet or wipe your feet? Does it mean this? Or does it mean, like, it was all just clear at that time. But I think over time, the language shifted, changed. There was some degrading. And so it's very different for someone who speaks Arabic today to understand the stuff in the Quran.
I agree with you, and if I can point out a small thing, I also think they missed a few meanings completely. Like, for example, Al-Mudathir, the hidden secret. I don't think they know what it means. And, other verses, like, for example, quote unquote, scientific miracles, like how the universe is expanding, كَانَتْ فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا, or stages of birth, or if the ants actually spoke. I guess a few things like that they didn't have a scientific corpus to verify, so I think those went over their heads. But I think like religious commandments and stories and all of that, they understood as clear as day. And I would agree with you, and through time, either by accident or I would argue deliberately, the meanings changed.
Yeah, and this resolves a lot of things that would seem like an apparent contradiction, because it's like, if we say the Quran's clear without ambiguity, but then today two Quranists pick up the Quran and they get completely different understandings, that shows me that they don't have access to the original meaning. So the language that existed originally is lost. There's just fragments of it that you have to like kind of put together, and even then there's no guarantee. But for us as submitters, it's like, okay, well, God sent a messenger to explain this stuff to us, to represent to us what the Quran was saying in the original language. That otherwise we just kind of have to like guess or analyze or kind of like put together on our own, which many times has led to many confusions and contradictions and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I agree with you.
this
It's like the
expression is,
idiom.
yeah, exactly. Like they don't even know the idioms, and it's like there isn't like a directory of Arabic language idioms that I'm supposed to go to. Like that's not a thing. That's why I can just right off the top of my head, I can recite many verses that it doesn't even matter. Even if they're scholars of classical Arabic, they still don't understand it. Right? 22:15 as an example, hang yourself. You know, what it's
Of Wunder.
38. Yeah, the 2189, enter your homes through the back door. Solomon's throne, the picking up of the weeds or whatever, and beating people. Like there's a bunch of verses, they just have no clue what they're saying, and they're scared of, when the Sunnis come here, they're scared to translate them because they know the meaning that they assign to them are gibberish, and they just have no idea what to do. So this tells me that their language was lost. The message of worship God alone is in the Quran. Everyone can access that with any translation in any language, in Arabic and non-Arabic. Everyone can access the message of worship God alone. And I think that's mainly what the people were responsible for the last 1,200 years. But beyond that, all this other stuff seems very difficult. Sorry.
Do you guys think that God evolved the Arabic language specifically to fit the purpose of the Quran, or that the Quran was made to fit the naturally evolved Arabic language in the preceding centuries before Muhammad?
I would say no, because the language evolved into something that's not the Quran. So when they say sunnah, the Sunnis say sunnah, the usage of that word is fundamentally different than what it's used as in the Quran. And many other words and phrases are changed. Peter has a couple of articles that are really good that talk about this, that it's like the usage of the words mean something different. They're not even relevant to what it's like. When the guy says, follow the sunnah, the Quran says to follow the sunnah of the Prophet. It's like the word sunnah is used in the Quran in reference to God's system. It has nothing to do with how the Prophet ate food, right? It says we destroy the communities that are rejectors or they transgress or whatever. That's the God's sunnah. That's God's system. These guys say, no, he chewed on a stick. That's sunnah. It's like, it just means something totally different. And I can't accept the newer meaning.
Salam alaikum.
Oh, walaikum salam. Please go ahead, brother.
Can we look at the footnote to verse 43:3, Surah Al-Zuruf, ornaments, and look at the footnote 43:3?
Yes. 43.
Arabic is the most efficient language, especially in expressing commandments, statutes, and exacting laws. Hence, the revelation of the Quran in Arabic for the clear understanding of all peoples, regardless of their tongues. One of the things that I think, by the grace of God, we all are aware of, a person does not have to be able to speak or understand Arabic in order to be a submitter. And a person does not have to understand the Arabic language in order to benefit from the Quran. We know in Surah 55, God says that God is the teacher of the Quran. That does not in any way absolve us of study, of learning Arabic, but it's very important to make a clear distinction that Arabic is not essential to understand God's revelation in the Quran. Arabic is the most efficient language. It is the most precise and efficient language to express what we read in the footnote. But that doesn't mean that Arabic is not the official language of Islam or submission. It doesn't mean that people have to know Arabic or that they cannot understand Quran, nor does it mean that if I am not reading the Quran in the Arabic text, I'm not reading Quran. Now, if someone may want to comment on that, I can read Quranic Arabic. I can't speak it, but I can at least read it. But it doesn't make sense to suggest that a person who's reading, for example, Rashad's translation in English, to say to them, oh, you're not reading the Quran because you're not reading it in Arabic. Questions, comments? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree for the most part what you're saying. I think the only issue I have is I think the deeper issue is the strict monotheism and the essence of worshiping God alone. That's a deeper issue. That's really what's going to save people, and you can even do that without the Quran, right? Anyone can. We all have the natural instinct to worship God alone. The difference is that the Quran is a blessing, and it can help facilitate that process. And the more we can learn from what the Quran is saying, the more we can benefit from what it's saying, and we can implement it into our lives to streamline that process. My thing is, I'm saying that for at least 1,200 years, the Arabic of the Quran has, in many regards, been lost. So I agree, anyone can pick up the Quran in any language from any author, any translation, and understand the concept of worship God alone, and that's the essential element. But beyond that, in many of these laws, many of these situations in the Quran, it's very difficult for any of these people throughout the ages to access all this. And I'm not even talking about they're trying to read it, but they just don't understand it. There was no Chinese translation of the Quran until less than 100 years ago. So if you're in China 500 years ago and you just can't read Arabic, I understand God's the teacher of the Quran, but if you just can't even read it and there's no translation for you, there's not much you can do. So in that situation, I think it was just the concept of worshiping one God, strict monotheism, that was essential for those people. But you have millions of people in China, they had no way to study the laws of the Quran, then I don't think they're responsible for that. And even if they did understand the contemporary language of Arabic that existed at their time, then even then there's all kinds of problems because they didn't understand. So for example, cutting off the hand of thieves, they thought that's, even the Arabic speakers all thought that's what it says. Or the definitions of many words, like I gave the example of sunnah and hadith and many words in the Quran are just fundamentally different than what they were in the original Quran. So when I'm saying that the Quran came in a language at the time for its people that's very clear. It's all clear for them. This is why the Prophet didn't explain the Quran, because it's all clear. And if they had a question, God would just give the Prophet more verses to recite to them because it was clear. There's no dispute. There wasn't a dispute about washing your feet or wiping your feet. The way the verse read to them was clear. It said, wash your feet. Now, Arabic linguists are debating about it. Right? There's all kinds of basic Arabic grammar that today the Arabic scholars and Arabic teachers, they're all debating about. They're not sure. They don't know. So this is a big blessing that for us, we have a messenger, God's messenger of the covenant. He'll just tell us the conclusions that we need. We don't even, like you said, we don't even need the Arabic. We can benefit if we study it, maybe get deeper grasp, but it's not essential. And we're able to access the laws of the Quran correctly. That's my point.
I wanted to chime into this discussion as well. So my understanding of this too, and I agree that by God's grace with Dr. Khalifa's translation and even even other translations, the essence is still, even in the previous scriptures, the truth can be found, and God is the one who guides, and God can guide in different ways. Even without scripture, God can guide people's hearts. And mashallah, like it was said, these are blessings. Scripture, Dr. Khalifa's translation, the wisdom that God blessed us with through him. And at the same time, my understanding of 12:2, we revealed it in Arabic Quran that you may understand. And the footnote by Dr. Khalifa refers to 4144 and Appendix 4. So when we look at those, 4144 subtitles language is irrelevant and says if we made it a non-Arabic Quran, they would have said, why did it come down in that language? Whether it is Arabic or non-Arabic, say for those who believe, it is a guide and healing. As for those who disbelieve, they'll be deaf and blind to it, as if they're being addressed from far away. So my understanding is this is getting at the sincerity that, why is it that those who believe it's a guide and a healing? Because those who believe they're sincere and they're going to be able to grasp it. So 5679 says none can grasp it except the sincere. And then in Appendix 4, Dr. Khalifa talks about how, mashallah, as it was said, that Arabic is the most efficient language. especially when it comes to the precise statement of laws. And so, since the Quran I'm reading from Appendix 4, second paragraph, since the Quran is a statute book, it is crucial that such laws must be clearly stated. And so it's unique, as the appendix talks about, in its efficiency and accuracy. For example, the word they in English does not tell you if they are males or females. In Arabic, there's a day for the males, hum, and a day for the females. So there's that precision and that in the Arabic language where one can tell a lot, where from other languages, things may not be clear. So that's why Quran is the perfect reference language, because we know the Quran also needs to be translated for people to understand it in different languages. And people can refer to the rest of Appendix 4 for details, but I wanted to share that. Thanks.
I shared 2 verses in the chat, 26, 198, 199 says the Quran must be translated. If we revealed this to people who do not know Arabic and had them recite it in Arabic, they could not possibly believe in it. And that's really the essence of the vast majority of the Muslim world. They're just reciting things that they don't know, right? They focus so much on the recitation and not on the comprehension that I would say 95% of Muslims or more, the most they can do is just recite some verses of the Quran, and they do not have a much, if not any, familiarity with the words. And another thing that's really interesting, you can check this for yourself. Check any verse of the Quran in Arabic and then compare it to the translation, even in English or another language. You'll see that the number of words used in Arabic are always going to be fewer than the number of English or Swedish or any other language words. Because of what was just said in Appendix 4 talks about this, that you can have 4 Arabic words equal to 1 word in another language. And it's not just unlimited basis. There's many instances of this. So if anything, at a minimum, if you have less text, then you have less room for error. And so think about it that the Quran could have been twice as long or 3 times as long. And so God packed in so much information in 6,346 verses that if it came in another language, it would be twice as long. And there would be so much more room for error, and the compiling would be so much more difficult, and the recitation and the memorization. And so I just think God sent a proper amount and efficiently delivered this scripture the way it is in its current format. Yeah. Anyway, for everybody that joined, peace be upon you, welcome. We just read chapter 12 from the beginning until verse 18. We were talking about verse 2 that says, we have revealed this in an Arabic Quran that you may understand. Somebody trying to speak?
Yeah, I was gonna shift to the another verse. We can come back to this though. Just this aspect of how people feel confident. Like if you look, Joseph's brothers in verse 8, they said, Joseph and his brother are favored by our father, and we are in the majority. Indeed, our father is far astray. That they think that because, hey, there's so many of them, they all have the same understanding, therefore they must be right. And what's interesting is if you go to the end of the surah, in 12:103, if I'm not, is it 103 or 106, and then 109, where it talks about, let me just make sure I pull up the right verse. So 103, the first one, and then 106. So 3 verses. And most people, no matter what you do, will not believe. And then 12:106 says, the majority of those who believe in God do not do so without committing idol worship. Contrast that with the one we read in 12:8, where it says, they said Joseph and his brother are favored by our father, and we are in the majority. Indeed, our father is far astray. This is just like a satanic tactic of people to think like, okay, well, which one's the majority? They must be right when it has to do with these aspects of morality and religion.
Yeah, mashallah, that's a good point that, we need to be careful that we don't, because people tend to think that, oh, whatever the majority is, whatever they're doing, they're thinking, that's gotta be right. And sometimes as submitters we hear like, oh, you think, there's such a small group of you, you think you guys are right, and the rest of these millions of people are wrong. And it's not the numbers that dictate who's right. And so this is something we want to be careful about. Mashallah, I was thinking about commenting on this verse too. I think, this is such a amazing surah. There's a lot of lessons, and may God help us to extract the lessons and the wisdom. Like one of the verses points that out. 7. And Joseph and his brothers, there are lessons for the seekers. And I think one of the lessons in this passage that we read is that people can have misperceptions. We are each looking through the world through our own lens. And if that lens is clear, and then we can see things clearly, and then that's what we act on. And if the ego is prominent, that lens is going to be very colored and distorted, and what we see may not be right. So these brothers are thinking that their father is stray, when we know that Jacob was a prophet. And not only is he not astray, not only is he a submitter, not only is he a believer, but he's a prophet of God. um, and there's actually a verse. Let's see if I could find it. Yeah, it's in 21:72 that God actually says like Jacob is righteous. So back to 21:71, we saved him and we saved Lot to the land that we blessed for all the people. So it's referring to Abraham and Lot, if you go back on the verses. And we granted him Isaac and Jacob as a gift, and we made them both righteous. So it's clear from the Quran that Jacob is righteous, and here the brothers are, this is their perception at that time, because there's that ego, and that's why there's also that jealousy um, for the brother that's driving them. And majority of them, I mean, all the brothers, all of Joseph's brothers, they come to this decision to throw him into, you know, basically to get rid of him. So this is something that it's also really good to be aware of, that we can have misperceptions, and to kind of be careful about that, because it, can have consequences if we misperceive things and then we act on that. Um, we can really hurt ourselves and other people. May God help us to avoid that. Thanks.
Anyone else have comments or questions about the verses for those who joined later? We read from chapter 12 from the start to verse 18.
Peace. Yeah. Regarding the first comment you made, so ayat generally refers to signs. So, how often does it refer to verses in the Quran? Some may argue that using their understanding of that word, that 12:1 or 2 was talking about verses rather than signs.
Barely ever is it used in the context of verses. The only example that often gets cited is chapter 3, verse 7, where it says we've made straightforward verses and allegorical verses. But more often than not, it's almost always exclusively in regards to signs or proofs.
Did you say that was 3:7 where it's ayat for verses?
Correct.
Okay. Mashallah, interesting. And so the rest of the ayahs are referring to signs.
Almost. It's not that. I mean, you can make arguments that it's some of the occurrences are in verses, but like again, the vast majority of times it's always in the context, and in the singular form, it's exclusively in the context of signs or a sign or a miracle. The classic example of that is like if you go to 1020. Navid had this in the initials one, right? It says, "They say, how come no miracle came down to him from his Lord? Say the future belongs to God, so wait, and I'm waiting along with you." And there you see ayah in the singular form. But yeah, like through and through in the Quran, in the plural form, almost exclusively, it's always in the context of signs or miracles. But there are some where it's like distinctly in regards to the verses.
Thank you, mashallah.
I had a question about verse 18. If Jacob knew that they conspired and they schemed and they did all this stuff, why doesn't he just, they're his sons, why doesn't he just have his sons just tell him what they did to Joseph? Why does he say all I can do is resort to a quiet patience? It just
So
seems weird to me. Yeah.
the whole premise here, okay, this has to do with the bigger theme of the entire surah. Whatever God wills is going to happen. There's nothing you can do to change it. Meaning that uh, uh, Jacob knew that. Sorry. Yeah. So he knew that this was the outcome of the events. When you look at this exchange that he has with the brothers, there is a key indicator here. He says, "The wolf may devour him." You don't use the wolf for a wolf you don't know. It's as if he knows this wolf is coming. He knows what the wolf is up to. He knows what's going to happen is outside of his control. And it's in the hands of God. That's the reason that he, numerous times in this chapter, he says, "Quiet patience is my only recourse." There's nothing he can do to change it, right? Even when he says, tells the brothers, enter through separate doors, but there's nothing that, you can change if God wills it. Meaning he's going to do his part, but he realizes he has no control in this matter. And think of this. Not only did he know that these guys are scheming, right? Later on in the chapter, when Joseph takes his shirt, okay, and he gives it to his brothers to restore his father's eyesight, before it even reached Jacob, he could sense it, right? Meaning he could smell the sense of Joseph. Now, there's no question someone with that, ability, that sense of smell, is going to see the shirt, smell it, and be like, "Oh yeah, totally believe you guys." Right? Meaning that he fully submitted, even though he didn't like it, he fully submitted to God's will. And it's worth when we read this chapter, the next couple weeks, to view it in that light. Because to me, that's the entire theme of this surah: is that we do our part, but we fully submit to whatever God wills.
Would you say there's an element of his submission that's lacking? Because I thought we're not supposed to feel sad about stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, he's not sad here. Is he saying he's sad?
So later on, he cries and he goes blind from
Yeah.
sadness and all that.
Yeah,
But there's
that's not good.
there's two things. One is there is this element where Jacob doesn't know, right? He doesn't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know if we want to get into it this week. That's what I believe the concern is about. But then also think of this: Moses's mother, right? She was inspired by God. Put him into the basket, throw him into the river. Yet she grew anxious. This is the whole concept. Like, look, we know deep down. Like, I think of it in this way: you watch a movie, it's a movie. It's all there, but your emotions are still driving. Why is it that you cry? Why is it that you feel anger, sadness, whatever, when you're watching a movie? It's all make believe. But nevertheless, you are emotionally attached. And I think that this is just kind of that wrestling that he's doing. Um, which it's funny. So they say that the word Israel means to wrestle with God. And they take it, into a direction that I personally don't ascribe to. But it's that aspect that God is in full control, Yet, it's still it's earth shattering, right? You see 2:2:2:14 says, it says, "Do you expect to enter paradise without being tested like those before you? They were tested with hardship and adversity and were shaken up until the messenger and those who believed with him said, 'Where is God's victory? God's victory is near.'" Meaning, like, he's going through this roller coaster. He trusts in God, but it's one of those things like, dude, when is this thing gonna end? When am I gonna get this relief?
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. I want to just add to what you have said, Brother Dude. Um, Jacob, we should know that Jacob was a human being, despite being a prophet of God. And part of his children, some were righteous, some were unrighteous, and they were committing evil. And they were committing evil against their own brothers, against the family. So definitely, as a father, he will be disturbed that part of his children or some of his children are not righteous. They are committing evil, and such an evil that is devastating, that they could even think of killing their own brothers. So as a father, being a prophet, he must be sad. He must be sad. Yes. And he knew exactly what God had promised Joseph right from the beginning. That was why he told him, don't even reveal your dream to your brothers, those king people. He had not even revealed his dream to them yet because of the evil tendency in their lives. They were committing, evil against their brothers. So Jacob was a prophet of God. He was a human being with blood, running through his veins. So he must be sad. This is what I want to add to this, inshallah. Yes.
I don't know. I just feel like I'm not. I appreciate all the responses. I'm just not fully satisfied with my answer. It's just like your kids come back and like one of your kids is like, yeah, something happens to this other one. It's like, all right, well, I'll just be patient. Let's just, sit
Yeah,
around until they
sometimes,
come back. I
yeah,
don't know
sometimes
what
we
to do
need,
there. It's like, what did you do to him?
yeah,
Take me there. Show me what happened. Take me to the spot that the wolf allegedly devoured him. Give me information. All right.
yeah.
Well,
Mm.
I'm sad about this.
You
Let's
know,
just sit down and
yeah, sometimes we as submitters or believers, we have to put our place in their shoes when we experience or see these things happening to God's messengers. We have to, you know, we we claim to be strong submitters, but when tested, that is when we would know that yes, the test coming from God would shake you. Just like Brother Dude said, I cited an example with Muhammad during war that they had to, seek God's help. God, where's your victory? It is only when you are tested that you know that yes, something is really, uh, really need God's support, to overcome whatever you are experiencing in your life. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to chime in as well. I can understand Brother Navid's question. I mean, such a big thing, and then to say, okay, I'm gonna, resort to a quiet patience. I think that the course of action, I think it depends on the situation, and I think, as we've discussed before, the best approach is to ask God for guidance, like in the situation that we're in, ask God for guidance and see how He guides us as to what is the best course of action in that situation. I think, and I think Brother Jude was speaking to this part where Jacob had a sense. I mean, um, he was a prophet of God, and God had kind of given him this sense that in this situation he knew that this was the best course. Like he had to just resort to a quiet patience, and he prayed to God. which I think is also always a good thing to do, to ask God, to pray to God, implore God in these situations. And so he asked God for help. And he knew. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Yeah.
I think Raji
Yeah.
wants to make a comment after you.
Okay, praise God. Yeah. So I think Jacob knew in this situation like that he was guided by God to know that at that point he just needed to be patient. Thanks.
Uh, there's a lot to learn from this story. Actually, it's one of my favorite stories. But one thing also it teaches us that everyone goes through the test. Even the prophets, messengers, they've been tested. So, of course, in terms of in the story of the prophet Jacob, we are not talking about 1-2 weeks. If I know, my kid is somewhere or whatever, I know, okay, God is running everything. This was years. It was taking years until you should have it's a lot of patience, especially if it is one of your children which you love. So this teaches us patience and that everyone will be tested.
I think Sister Miroslava wanted to make a comment. Go ahead, sister.
I'm just testing the mic.
Yeah, your sound quality is not the best, unfortunately.
How does it sound?
It sounds a little warped, but were you just testing then? Were you trying to make a comment?
No, it's okay.
No problem. Peace be upon you, Sister Suja. Did you have a comment? Sister Suja, did you want to say something?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is one of my favorite chapters, Joseph. Um, Quran, I think throughout the Quran, there are examples of prophets and the hardships and the way they were tested. And I believe the more you're closer to God, the test would be, more. I mean, we as submitters probably, as we get deeper into submission, we get closer to God. I think our test would be higher. So just imagine, Jacob, probably waiting for his son to come. And God had assured him, that he would probably, there was an assurance because, he was a prophet and, there was an assurance probably from God that, Joseph would return. Similarly, Moses' mother, you know, uh, I mean, uh, we cannot even imagine the trials they would have gone. And yes, even we are tested every day, isn't it? I mean, the test that each one of us go through, only strengthens our faith, right? So, and God does tell, He will not let any soul enter paradise without being tested, right? Yeah, so this is something that I think each one of us should ponder on and strive um, for God's mercy and for His paradise, I believe. Yeah, thank you.
Praise God. Thank you so much. Welcome back. It's nice to see you. I wanted to say that my takeaway is I think that the Quran is showing us that these people are humans. As the sister said, these prophets and messengers, they are humans and they're exhibiting human traits. We shall never idolize them and we shall never think of them as infallible or elevate them to a status beyond what a human being is. Now, of course, they're righteous human beings and they're working hard to perform righteousness and act according to God's commands, but they're still human. In regard to this question that I asked, maybe if I can try to answer myself, is that I think maybe there's additional details here that we don't know about. I don't think the Quran gives all the information about every event. For example, when you have the letter, the exchanges between the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, I don't think we have the full text of each of the correspondence, right? I don't think God gives us the information about everything. God gives us what we need in order to learn the lesson and to benefit from it. But in this specific situation with Jacob, I'm not sure if we know the full extent. Maybe they did have a. Maybe they did put together a search party. Maybe they did go around like looking for Joseph or these kinds of things. I don't know, right? But the lesson, maybe the lesson is, at some point, you just reconcile with the fact that God is running everything. We leave things to God. We do our best, and we just try to maintain righteousness in this situation.
Maybe I think the point is that by submitting to God's will, he knows there's nothing he can do to get Joseph back. So there's no point in doing a search and rescue operation.
Yeah, as well, Jacob knew he was blessed with vision, possessed vision, like he could see the future in Surah 38:45. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were resourceful and possessed vision. I think he could see and as well in 1268, the last sentence, Jacob, for he possessed certain knowledge that we taught him, but most people do not know. And that's why he was resorting to quiet patience, I think, because, and as well, this event had to take place for a historic person, like this was destined to be. So I guess that's why he was resorting to quietly. As well, I think this surah has like jealousy plays a big part because we know jealousy emotion is the cause of wars and all kinds of things. And I believe there's a verse in the Quran that says, when in heaven where jealousy is removed from our hearts, I believe there's a verse that says that. So I think there's a lot of lesson, and jealousy plays a big part in there as well.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I think there's a verse that regarding the story of Joseph and his father, is that I think there's something that there. I think the verse says really that he has a dilemma. Basically, he said that's verse 86, Surah Joseph. He said, "I simply complain to God about my dilemma and grief, for I know from God what you do not know." So it seems that you can take it different. There's various ways you can look at this, and I think there's something about him that he's not quite settled with. He knows something, but he knows that. I think he knows that Joseph's going to come back. And that's one thing, but there's something else that bothers him, or there's something beside that knowledge that God given him that he can't come in peace with it, and perhaps that may be the source of part of the source of the grief. Part of it, I think, was said it was his children, being like that, and causing this, and not knowing what to do with them, and perhaps maybe some of us can resonate with this when your children behave in a certain way which you don't approve, and you have no way of dealing with it, and they carry on behaving in such a way. So it is very difficult for you to comprehend what's the lesson in that. He knew that Joseph would return. It's just the fact that maybe there was something else that he couldn't quite understand, and he was having a hard time accepting or submitting fully. So I think that's the question is, what was the dilemma? And there are various answers for that. I don't have one single one. All right. That was my comment.
I wanted to bring up another kind of a verse from what we read in verse 9 and 10. This concept of thinking that the ends justify the means. It says, "Let us kill Joseph or banish him, that you may get some attention from your father. Afterwards, you can be righteous people." As if like you can commit such an egregious, sin, and then just go back to being righteous. I think a lot of people they misconstrue this aspect. Like we don't get to LARP into righteousness. This is something that God grants us. If we make these decisions to do something, as horrendous as plotting to kill your brother, and say, okay, well, look, I'm just going to do this horrendous thing, and then I'll be done with it. Then I'll go back to being righteous, as if like you can make that choice. Like, no, you already your decisions have dictated that you're lacking in belief, and you're going to pay the price for it. And if you read verse 10, it says, "One of them said, 'Do not kill Joseph. Let us throw him into the abyss of the well. Perhaps some caravan can pick him up.' This is what you decide to do." This aspect of thinking like, oh, we'll just like, do it in a way where no one sees. And this language that's used, the abyss of the well, as if, oh, because no one sees it, therefore it's not an issue. How many times people commit, horrendous sins just because they think, no one's watching them. We have to realize God is watching us. In chapter 11, verse 5, it says, "Indeed, they hide their innermost thoughts as if to keep him from knowing them. In fact, as they cover themselves with their clothes, he knows all their secrets and declarations. He knows the innermost thoughts." There's nothing we can hide from God. We have to act as if, God is with us at every moment. And, in the decisions we make, there is no, we're not going to scheme against God. We're not going to be able to commit, horrendous sins and then just act like nothing happened.
Marshall, I want to add something to that. Is I've mentioned this before. I think because you mentioned it, it just reminded me that as submitters, we should be process driven, not result driven. I think often we we focus on let's look at this result, let's look at that result, and trying to analyze back whether your action was right or wrong. It's the opposite. We should look at how we do and carry out our things, and we should leave the result to God. And the result could be either different things. Could mean one way or the other. Is as the same way God gives an example. Is not those people are blessed with wealth and children. Are they guided? Like they have some results, in apparent results in this world. Does that mean that this results means that they've done something right? According to God, no. Is our actions, whether we have righteous in our actions, is that what it matters? The result is always up to God. And if we focus on the results, sometimes we can be deceived by it and draw wrong conclusion from it. So it is important how we carry out things, how we speak to each other, how we treat each other, is more important than what kind of results we want to get out of a discussion or what kind of conclusion we want to drive from it. Because if we are conclusion driven, then the conclusion drives our motivations, and we lose sight of what we need to pay attention to.
Mashallah, some great comments and reminders. I wanted to add a few things. So, just briefly to go back to the previous topic, that I think it's in this example, mashallah, like as it was said, like Jacob had the son, so that's what he did. But we need to do our part. We see that as well, like in the verses where he tries to stop them, like when they say, "Our father," 11, "Why do you not trust us with Joseph?" And then we will protect him. And then he says, "I worry lest you go away with him, and then the wolf may devour him while you're not watching him." So he's expressing concern, but the brothers kind of push forward. So in this situation, this is like Jacob doing his part. And in each situation, we want to ask God for guidance, pray to God, and then we also need to do our part, whatever we think is appropriate. Um, and about the previous comment about this, the misperceiving and things being clear, I was just thinking about how we're in Ramadan right now, and I think one of the positive effects is helping us to kill our ego, and we can see things more clearly in this month potentially. And especially if we kind of tune in, tap in. And so it's really a good opportunity to try to see ourselves and our lives and especially what we're doing, saying, thinking more clearly so we can address anything that it would be good to address. Thanks.
I wanted to make another comment on that same verse, verse 10. It says, one of them said, "Do not kill Joseph. Let us throw him into the abyss of the well." This aspect, we see this in a lot of these righteous people, where they're basically thrown. In this case, thrown into a well. We see that Muhammad was in a cave. Um, we have the sleepers of the cave, right? Going into these places where they look dead, right? That's the whole concept. And there's this premise between being buried and being planted. On surface level, they look like one and the same. If someone is buried or planted, but the difference is, someone who's buried, they're not coming back. But someone who's planted, they're in the environment that's conducive for their growth. And oftentimes in the lives of the the believers, they hit a point where it looks like they're quote unquote dead. You have the expression from Mary where she isolated herself in an eastern location, and when the birth process came to her, she said, "I wish I was dead and long forgotten." She didn't realize like what a huge blessing to the world was bestowed upon her. But in that time frame, it looked like her thoughts was, "I wish I was dead and long forgotten." And to think that from her came Jesus and his teachings, and this is in the lineage of all of God's prophets and messengers. She couldn't fathom that that God has selected her out of all the women for this task, and when it happened, it was something that seemed horrendous. I mean, you think about that verbiage. "I wish I was dead and long forgotten." And God sent assurances to Joseph. It says, inspired him. "Someday you will tell them about all this while they have no idea." But that it seems so lonely. It seems like you've been abandoned, forsaken. You've been, exiled. You're done for, and we have to trust that no, God has a huge plan that we are just oblivious to. We underestimate just how much of an impact any of us can have. You think about it, this ripple effect as the population grows. Each of these people that God willing, we inspired by God's leave, we give them the message, or God willing, just give them that one word, that thing, that seed that allows them to grow their faith. And then they have offspring, and they pass that on to their generation, and that next generation. Very shortly, you might impact the lives of millions of people, and you have no clue. You can never fathom it. You can't imagine these small contributions that, by God's leave, we might be making, that just have huge waves down the road.
Praise God. I also wanted to add that we entered the second half of the Quran study. So if anyone wants to talk about any topics separate from the verses, we can do that too. Actually, hold on. We can just go to. Is it okay if Blob has a question and we just address it real quick?
Yeah, I got a feeling it's going to derail. I mean, the dude just
Yeah, I can just shut it down really quickly if it's problematic. Go ahead, Bob. What's your question?
They're in VC2. They're not even in this one.
Oh, okay, then never mind. Okay. I wanted to make a few announcements since we passed the halfway mark. Praise God, we had several new people come in the last week and converts. Really good. Did we have? Oh, Brother Said is not here. However, Brother Said accepted submission, I think the last 2 days ago. And also Brother Hisham, he also accepted submission, and it's exciting because he's a native Arabic speaker from Tunisia. So praise God for the two new submitters in the last week. Yeah, thank you. And also, people really enjoyed Brother Said's voice. They're having a so just to
Algeria.
announce this really quick.
It's Algeria. It's Algeria, and
I'm
I'm
so
writing in
sorry.
Arabic.
I'm so
If I
sorry.
can
I'm
have,
so sorry.
no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. If I can have, anything within my capabilities, I would absolutely do it.
He's a very, I would just introduce you to everybody. Very smart guy, very righteous, very knowledgeable. God bless
Hey,
you. I'm
thanks,
really
man.
happy you're here.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm actually also happy for being here, man. That's quite this Discord was an amazing discovery, and I hope we can grow more and make it to something that's even better and better.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks,
The
man.
other thing I wanted to say is they're having event. So in the first 19 days of Ramadan, the entire Quran was completed, 114 chapters. That was by Sister Farah, Sister Teratai, Brother Zainal, and others, Sister Zubaida, and many others that helped. They finished the whole Quran, 114 chapters, and now they're doing a full assessment and a reading of the appendices. That was on the 19th day of Ramadan. Now we're on Appendix 2. That should start in a few hours. I think in about 5 hours that's starting. And that was really interesting. And Brother Saeed, who's also a new submitter, is really good, and he's helping to facilitate that. I strongly encourage everybody to join. I shared the link in VC1-chat. That's in about 5 hours from now. And also, it's been great. Let's see. Another announcement is we have a new moderator on the server. That's Brother Jonathan, and he's wonderful, new submitter, and also an expert on refuting of hadith. He's an academic, very knowledgeable, and I suggest you ask him questions or look at his materials on here. He's just very well versed in the history and the different level of scholarship about hadith. Did I miss anything, Peter? Was there anything else?
Just a couple articles came out. Yeah, but honestly, I check out a Hadith critic on Twitter or X. Got a really good thread. One from the Dajjal. The other one is his basically looking at the five pillars of Islam. Jonathan, is he on? Jonathan?
Yeah, he's
Hey,
on.
I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
He's unmuted, but I cannot hear him.
He might not be able to talk. Yeah, I'll put the link. Give me 1 sec. Godwin, I feel like getting his material more circulated is good for more people to be exposed to this. And as Navid said, he has some good dank memes. Yeah. So a couple articles. Didn't do a podcast episode this week, but on the audio one, I released the Hadith and Women. But since last week, let me see. Did we? I can't remember if this was before or after the study. So there's one on dietary prohibitions, Quran versus Hadith. Another one regarding the messenger's example in 33:21, because this comes up a lot. People they say out here. I'll just link to these. Say in 33:21 says the messenger has set a good example, and then people say, oh, that means that we have to follow the Hadith, and it's a refutation against that argument. Yeah, there's a comparison between the dietary prohibitions in the Quran versus the Hadith. Another one regarding this law of agency, which has to do with kind of the plural use of we in the Quran, as well as when it talks about obey God and obey the messenger. how God is doing these things, through these different means. Um, we already shared the one regarding the letters, our proofs. And then, yeah, this one, God willing, I'm going to try to do an episode for this coming week. I already recorded it. I just have to do the video. But it has to do with can the prophet hear us regarding like salawat and, even intercession. So, yeah, I put those in the chat. I added them to, I think they're all in the content sharing channel as well.
Wonderful.
Hey, does anyone else have any updates or things they want to share, either a personal or community? It's a good time. I know some people are active on a TikTok, making videos and stuff. So if anyone wants to share material, hopefully we can help promote it and just get the word out for other people to find.
Yeah, I would just say that in the last week, we've had a bunch of new people, and I really appreciate everyone putting effort to join and talk to the new people and explain the religion. And it really makes a difference. We have another sister, her username on here is Meow, and she's also been helping with the recitation and the readings in VC4. So yesterday, she finished all the rest of Appendix 1. So that was great. And this is somebody that just joined the server less than 3 days ago or 3 days ago. And now, because of the efforts of everybody and God's support, now they accepted Code 19. They're moving towards, studying submission and learning submission and getting to that. That's fantastic. That's really good. I know, I hate it. I'm sorry. I really hate it. Anyway, that's really good. It's really beneficial. Also, Brother Raju has been very helpful, helping us. Thank you so much, Brother Raju, for coming in and supporting our discussion.
Since you're introducing, let me introduce recently joined our brother Said Ibrahim. His username is Shade under 19. He is an old submitter, 23 years in submission. MashaAllah, very knowledgeable, and today joined us for the Quran study.
Can you join? I mean, can you unmute? Said, can you unmute?
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. How are you all?
Hey, assalamu alaikum. Good to have you, brother.
Yeah, good, alhamdulillah.
I think we should never underestimate how much confidence it gives people when they come on and they see that there's throngs of people who are embracing submission. It just gives it there is this element in the past, and say for instance it was just a few of us, or maybe sometimes even one of us, and we'd be outnumbered 10, 20 to 1. It's easy for people to dismiss, but when they see that there's so many people who believe, who share the same kind of like love for God alone, it just makes people take heed. So anytime we can contribute beyond VC in the text channels, it makes a difference, right? It's not something that should be underestimated. And this is something that to put the verse 9:120. So it says, neither the dwellers of the city nor the Arabs around them shall seek to stay behind the messenger of God when he mobilizes for war, nor shall they give priority to their own affairs over supporting him. And this part says, this is because they do not suffer any thirst or any effort or any hunger the cause of God, or make a single step that enrages the disbelievers, or inflict any hardship upon the enemy without having it written down for them as credit, God never fails to recompense those who work righteousness. It says, nor do they incur any expense, small or large, nor do they cross any valley without having the credit written down for them. God will surely reward them generously for their works. No matter what effort we contribute, God, is gonna take note of it, and it makes a difference. You have no clue. Sometimes one person comes in and just makes the exact, point that the individual needed to hear, and that's what shifts the um, scales for them. So, it might be something in the text channels. It might be, just linking to, say, something you saw on TikTok or Twitter or YouTube, or just, bringing up the right verse. And that's the thing is we're just stronger in numbers by God's leave. We support each other. Where one person is weak, another person is strong. And it's just we build community. And the aspect is like, this is this is God giving us the baton saying, okay, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to just waste it like the generations have done in the past? Or are you going to, actively try to promote the truth? And it's a great opportunity. And God tells us, if we waste it, no issue. God has legions and legions of people that He can bring on board, but He's giving each of us this opportunity to thrive in His cause. And on the day of resurrection, God willing, we can be one of those who say, come read my record. I did believe God was going to hold me accountable, and I use this opportunity the best of my ability. No matter how insignificant it might seem, the fact that if we make God a priority, He recognizes it, and He only holds us responsible for what we have, and each of us have something to contribute by God's leave.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that point. It is very powerful and it is very significant. Even the minute comment that may seem insignificant to someone has a life changing thing. I was actually talking to Doc about this earlier today. It's like, look, someone comes on here, just hearing a couple very minor comments of God bless you, thanks for coming, this is the God's path, read the Quran. These simple reminders are extremely influential, beneficial, impactful. And I think a lot of times we underestimate the the impact God puts in our speech, both positive and negative, right? And so that's why it has a really profound influence. And I think that's another thing to remember is we have Quran study here, and that's wonderful, and we are studying the Quran. That's great, but also this is a platform that's public, unlike other spaces, and it's actively spreading God's message in the same time. I mean, 2-3 people converting within the last week, or several people last month. It's not a minor thing. These are like genuinely interested people that put the time and dedication. They're genuinely interested in worshiping God alone and learning the truth. And whatever we could do to facilitate that is righteous works as fantastic. You put a verse you wanted to share with us, Peter?
Yeah, you can read it. You can read it, brother.
Yeah, so I see God from Satan the Rejected. Qualities of the believers, 48:29. Muhammad, the messenger of God, and those with him are harsh and stern against the disbelievers, but kind and compassionate amongst themselves. You see them bowing and prostrating as they seek God's blessings and approval. Their marks are on their faces because of prostrating. This is the same example as in the Torah. Their example in the gospel is like plants that grow taller and stronger and please the farmers. He thus enrages the disbelievers. God promises those among them who believe and lead a righteous life forgiveness and a great recompense. So we have to be kind and compassionate with believers, and I would even extend this to potential believers or people that or prospective submitters that are not enemies. They're generally asking questions, and we have to be careful also to think that just because somebody's asking questions that are controversial or seem problematic to us doesn't make them an enemy. We need to have patience, lower our wing, and be willing to practice what we preach, in submission. I also wanted to, AAA, if you're here, I also wanted to thank you for your efforts. AAA, Mr. Amir, has been very helpful in the last few days, or even more than, probably longer than that I know of. That, I'll be in a difficult situation where I have to do other things while I'm on a call on the voice channel. And he's a medical student in class, and he'll leave class, in the middle of the session to be able to help on the voice channel because of it's an important discussion or we need backup. So there's many knowledgeable people here. I strongly encourage others to help. I really appreciate AAA. I love to hear him talk and hear his explanations, but I hope that it's not, limited to just a few people, like, including him. I would want more people to be involved. And it's a big blessing. I really appreciate everybody's efforts in any capacity to deliver the message. Yeah, you tagged the wrong account. That's not me, but I see what you're writing. Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We can just keep going.
God willing.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
Regarding
please.
the verse you read, their marks are on their faces. Some of the traditional Muslims take this out of context. Literally, they do something by rubbing their foreheads and all. It become like a black coin on their forehead. Just because this verse mentioned, you will find the marks on their faces. So we have actually few members in our company with the same thing intentionally. This is intentionally done to make your forehead, like basically the skin become thicker and it appears dark. So due to show that due to prostration. So this has been completely taken out of context, and literally they are trying to rub their foreheads to create that mark on their face.
Yeah, praise God. Praise God. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments they like to share or ask?
Salam alaikum.
What do the marks on the face? Oh, sorry, I apologize. I was just gonna say, what do the marks on the face like represent?
Rashad says these represent happy faces.
Okay, gotcha.
Go ahead, Brother Douglas.
Okay. I'd like for some of you all to help clarify for everyone the fact that Muslims do not believe in the Mahdi. We do not believe, nor are we told in the Quran, that Jesus is going to return at the time of the day of judgment. I think this one of the reasons inspires me by God for us to clarify this is because this is rampant on the internet. It is rampant that Muslims believe that Jesus is going to return, and we believe there's a Mahdi coming. So can you all, let's clarify this.
Yeah, no problem. So in the Quran, there is no concept, reference to, indication, or otherwise of a Mahdi figure or a Messiah or anything that's coming in this regard other than the messenger of the covenant, which is referenced in chapter 3, verse 81. There is no Mahdi. Now, having said that, the messenger of the covenant did say that if anyone, Jews, Christians, or Muslims, are waiting for a Mahdi or a Messiah or Jesus returning or anything, the one that's coming back, all of these are represented by the coming of Dr. Rashad Khalifa. So he does say this, and he does make this point. So he
Yes.
says, if anyone's waiting for anybody, I'm the guy. I'm the one that's here, basically.
But when it comes to end of the world, because they believe end of the world, Jesus will come. Even in Iran, they believe Ali also will come and so on. But from the Quran, we learn that end of the world, God and angels will come, which is we are talking about the end of the time.
Yes.
But they said no, there will be Mahdi will show up, then the Iranians made up that Ali will show up, different kind of idols.
I just put it in VC1-chat. This is a screenshot of the submitter's perspective where he made this announcement, and it's a very profound announcement because he says, through Gabriel, I was commanded to make this announcement. After I die, millions of believers will know that I represent the Messiah the Jews have been waiting for, the Christ Christians have been expecting, the Mahdi the Muslims have been praying for. I am God's messenger of the covenant, Malachi 3:1-8 and Quran 3:81.
Assalamu alaikum.
Peace be upon you.
Peace be
Brother
upon
Hakim.
you, Brother Hakeem, checking in. I also would like to add, because I'm glad that this came up. First of all, I want to say the what you read, Brother Naveed, from the Quran about the marks. I used to think, like so many others, that, oh, maybe I don't have that mark on my head because I don't prostrate enough. But then I realized this is clear as day as you read it. Yes, happy faces, the peace, the joy in the eyes, all of that stuff, the humility, and I get that, man. I love to put this in perspective. So thank you very much, Naveed, for clarifying that for me. And also, a lot of this stuff is going on the internet, especially with the things that's going on internationally, overseas, and all these things. I am so glad that I've been brought into this fold to denounce all idolatry. If anything was to happen, whether it be to a Quran or to the Dome of the Rock, those are just idols, and I have to remember that. And if it wasn't for this joyful news and this great information that was given to me, I could get caught up in the madness. But nope. So let's tie it in with the joyful faces, because I'm not caught up in all of this hoopla. I get to be joyful even in these times of chaotic times, and God has matched my calamity with serenity. So I'm grateful with that. Thank you.
MashaAllah.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you, Brother Hakeem. I hope you join us more often. And I also wanted to announce the Night of Destiny. That's next Friday. We have that event. There's 51 people signed up. I'm actually happy at how many people signed up for that. But that's in the chat, VC1-chat. That's the Night of Destiny next Friday. And we will have that all night, God willing. We will commemorate God willing. And read Quran and maximize this night because it's better than 83 years. And praise God, we got several more people signed up. Now it's 54. Oh, somebody unjoined. Please make sure you have a check mark, because if you press it twice, it removes it. Now it reduced from 55 to 54. Now it's 55 again. That's good. Yeah, make sure you have a check mark on the event. That means you're signed up. And I wanted to say, especially for people that are not part of a community, it's really important to join if you can, so you can have an organized, systemic commemoration of God. And we talked about this, how if you are alone, you can have some stamina and you can do well. But when you're in an like a group of people, kind of like an army, everyone is just going to keep pushing each other to go harder. And especially if this is going to be, 8, 9, I don't know, is it 9 hours, 10 hours long? That's kind of a marathon. So it is definitely a booster to have other people to pick you up and just keep going. with the commemoration, the chanting, repeating of God's name. I hope Sister Farhana will be there, and also Sister Nancy with a great voice. That's really good, and others as well, so we can commemorate God collectively and just keep going to maximize this
Naveed,
entire
what time
night.
it will be in US? It will be what time in US?
Yeah, it's gonna be 8 o'clock in the MST, 8 o'clock Mountain
Yeah.
Standard Time.
It will be like 6 a.m. our time in
You can
Dubai.
see, yeah, you can see the event. The event is in the chat and it's listed in your local time. For everybody, it's listed in local time.
Right.
Yeah, it should be great. It should be great. And if anyone has any Night of Destinies that they're participating in and they would like to share with us a broadcast for us, we would appreciate that too, so that people in different time zones can listen to something and participate with something. So if any community has any Night of Destiny, you can just broadcast it in the channel, meditation channel, or whatever channel, and that way more people can listen and benefit from the commemoration of God.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much, Sister Suja. If you can help, that's fantastic. Okay. Anyone else have a question? We can just keep going. We have 25 more minutes for the session. We talked about the Mahdi question. Is that sufficient, Brother Douglas? The answer on that one?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Yes. And if this is clarified for us, but if there is something that can be done, either a Quran talk or something, to put this on the other platforms on the internet like TikTok or X, something, because it's just rampant. It's just ridiculous how this is spread, how this is promulgated, you know, the notion of the Mahdi. And again, it's just another example of misleading others. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
I think Brother Dude have a video about this, if I'm not mistaken.
Not regarding the Mahdi specifically, but the death of Jesus. There's an episode on that.
Right.
But it's a good one. Look into.
Thank
Any
you.
chance
Thank
of,
you, Brother Dude.
if we can inspire I don't know if is he still on? Yeah. Oh, he's deafened. I was gonna say inspire Jonathan to get into the podcast activity.
And even the audio Qurans are very helpful. I think we have in submission archives like 6 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. We can do it, but with my Middle Eastern accent, so it would be better, Jonathan or other brothers, to record it.
Yeah, I was hoping with some of the AI tools. I know I was talking with McClicken. They're really good, and you can get them in any voice you want. So you can have Morgan Freeman, reading the Quran. And it's like it comes out really good.
Yeah, even the Code 19 documentary, that is very clear. Right? That's AI.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I feel like we should just automate the recitation with one of those readings. Just put it on YouTube and MP3 so people can just access.
I think we need to have the documentary with more languages and subtitles.
Arabic.
Yeah, I can get Arabic subtitles. We need to talk to Star and get some of this done. Okay. AAA asked a question about chapter 72. Did you want to load the verses? Oh, you don't know which verse you want to ask about? I don't know what you're asking. Because when the jinns had seats to eavesdrop, when did they have those seats? What do you mean seats? There's no seats. They just get closer
It
to
says
the.
we used to sit and listen.
Oh,
Yeah, so this I'm gonna link to it. I wrote about this concept and pulled some stuff from the Bible. I'm just trying to find the right article, but the verse he's talking about, it says,
yeah,
"We
I got
touched
it.
the
Verse
heaven."
9.
8 to 9. So it says, "We touched the heaven and we found it filled with formidable guards and projectiles. We used to sit there in order to spy. Then anyone who listens is now pursued by a powerful projectile." Meaning there was a time period where they were allowed to. Um, I'm seeing if this is yeah. Okay, here we go. You have these references in the Bible of basically like what's references the great council or the great assembly. So you'll see it in Psalms 82, Psalm 89. It says, God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among, and then it uses the term gods, but it's not to be taken obviously literally, right? How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? And it continues, the gods know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of earth are shaken. I said, you are gods. You are all sons of the Most High. You will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. And this kind of and I'll just share the article. But yeah, there's this reference like in the Bible of that there was a council, and this is kind of it touches on it in Surah 38 regarding the great feud. That there was a time when they were able to kind of like sit and listen, and it was kind of open. And then afterwards, it seems like after the feud, these entities that question God's absolute authority were exiled, and they were prohibited from being able to live. Just for reference, it's 3867 through 69 to say, "Here's awesome news that you are totally oblivious to, because I had no knowledge previously about the feud in the high society." You know, there was a turning point in this, high society, this council, where all of a sudden it seems like yeah, these entities that were previously allowed to I wouldn't say participate, but observe, were banished from being able to do so.
Are we in open session?
Yeah. If there's anything you want to bring up or discuss.
Still interested. Would like to know others' thoughts on this in the Quran when during Joseph's time, it's not being called Pharaoh. It's been called King, the King. But during Moses' time, you see in the Quran, it's being called Pharaoh. And I don't know this. We can rely on history or no. At some point, the Hyksos was ruling Egypt. Don't know if we can make any connection or no. But it's interesting that beginning is using the word the king. I don't know what's the Arabic name for that. But later, during Moses' time, it's calling Pharaoh. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's an establishment of the dynasty, possibly.
Yeah, so the year of the pharaohs was a limited time period, which is interesting because the Quran makes that distinction. I still make the mistake. I say pharaohs when I'm in reference to Joseph, but uh, yeah. In the Bible, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't. I think it references Joseph's the king at the time is Pharaoh, if I'm not mistaken.
But like the old dynasty, like the time of Khufu, it's like 4,000 years ago. So that predates Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, or you're just thinking.
But so, what can somebody give me so 1251 is the Aziz, right? That's the governor. So
Correct,
who do we have a verse for the
King?
do you have a verse for
The
the
King's
king?
Dream. The King's Dream.
Which verse is that?
I'll pull it up. It's in the...
Yeah, just for Brother Ibrahim. As far as I can tell, almost everywhere it's Friday. So definitely don't observe Night of Destiny on Sunday. That's wrong. That's a mistake, Brother Ibrahim. Please don't do that. Do it. It's Friday. Night of Destiny is on Friday. And I think that's pretty much for the whole world, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
I think
we
for me.
looked. It was for Australia.
Yeah, but
Right on
even
the
not even all of Australia. It's only for
yeah.
for
The West.
east of Australia only.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. You're right. East. Yeah. I put the verse, so it says the king said, and the words Malik.
Okay.
That 7 fat cows. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's Maliku. Malik. Okay. So yeah, it's not the king. And I just want to say that Joseph is off from Moses' time about 300 years. So during these 300 years, they just changed it, or God just wanted to use the name of Pharaoh as in Pharaoh to reference Pharaoh, and maybe even if there was another Pharaoh, God just references him as the ruler or the king to
Yeah,
not make it confusing. Yeah.
yeah, we never know, but it's interesting. So if no one has any other question, I have one more subject to mention, inshallah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this one also I mentioned before. I'm not sure. Just want to know your thoughts about the word "ya." You know, even during Rashad, if you see them Night of Destiny, they're saying Allah, Allah. They're not saying "ya." I'm not saying prohibited. Don't get me wrong. Just want to know your thoughts on this. All over the Quran, when you see the prayers, you don't see a single place saying "Oh Lord" or "Oh Allah." Like you will see opposite when God is referring to His creation, "Oh Moses," or you know. So the word "ya," of course, traditional is using a lot, "Ya Allah" and so on. But if you look all over the Quran, it's only when God is talking about His creation. "Oh Moses," it's me, for example, talking to you, and so on. But so we have some example of prayers, Abraham prayers, and so on. We don't see anywhere you mention "Oh Lord" or "Ya Rab," or you know. So, what is your thought on that?
You'd have to look at more if it ever. Yeah, I don't recall. Yeah, Yahoo law. But we do have Allahumma, our Lord. It's
No, we have
interesting.
our Lord, but I mean, oh, yeah,
Yeah, I
you
know.
know, I don't see anything. Yeah, Rashad also in the Night of Destiny, you know, it started Allah. He could have said, Ya Allah. So this was also just caught my attention. However, we can never say it's prohibited or anything, but I thought maybe someone have a better understanding of that.
Does ya mean O in Arabic?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and mashallah, I agree that it's it's not prohibited. But yeah, in terms of if there's a precedent for it in the Quran, I'm not remembering off the top of my head if for O, there is mashallah like Rabbana, like, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even we have the examples of the prayers, you know, different prayers, different chapters, like Abraham praying, or you know, but you don't see it calling "Oh Lord" or. But in Bible we have, right?
I believe so, but then again, I can't think of a specific off the top of my head, but I believe so.
All right.
So my understanding is that for us, God is close, but for God, maybe we're supposedly like 7 heavens away. I don't know. Like maybe He can hear us easy, but we need to, listen intently. What do you think? Did he say "O Moses"? Is that a thing? He says "O Moses," right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
used. It's used for. Oh, sorry. Um, throughout the Quran for like the messengers and the prophets and people. Like it's a common use. Yeah, I don't recall. It's true. I don't think it's ever used for Allah, which is interesting.
No, I think
Salam
it does make
alaikum.
sense. If we believe he's close, alaikum salam. If we believe he's close, then we should treat him like he's close, right?
Salam alaikum. I'd like to go back to the question about when God is referring to the governor. This is Joseph and the governor, and later on the king, right? Now, if we keep in mind that all the initial surahs, the count of the letters in the initial surahs is exact and precise, correct? Now, if the word Pharaoh or Pharaoh was used in Surah 12, it would it would take the count of the Ra off by one. You see what I'm saying? That God is, all knowing, omniscient, and the code is infallible and precise. That we don't know except for what God tells us. When God just says governor, or he says Malik or king. But for example, if Faroon was used in Surah 12, the count of the Ra would be off. I'm just bringing this up as a reminder in terms of the count of the letters in the surah. The surah begins with Alif Lam Ra. Thank you. Salam alaikum.
I put an article. It's a scholarly article about the chronic accuracy versus biblical error, kings and pharaohs of Egypt. That in addition to Douglas, yeah, what you mentioned too, it does argue that historically, actually correct, that the dynasty of the pharaohs wasn't a thing at the time of uh, Joseph. That was something that came after him.
Yes,
It's worth checking
yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know about a lot of this stuff in terms of identity of the pharaoh or the king or a lot of stuff, but we just know that it's a few years,
Oh, yeah.
it's a few centuries difference between um, Joseph and Moses.
Something I want to add to this, in terms of archaeological discoveries, they are famous, wiping out the previous kings and so on. At the moment, maybe it's God's plan, because everyone maybe believe. I didn't find any solid archaeological discoveries related to time of Moses or Joseph. What is your thought about that?
So the archaeological. I'll share something interesting. Give me a sec. Are you talking about the regarding Joseph specifically?
Not only Joseph, even Moses.
It's just-
Israelites, Moses or Joseph. I found few hints. I mean, they're attributing, but didn't find any solid proof that specifically mentioned the name or the Israelites, so on.
I'm going to share something. Someone shared this with me, and so they believe that this might be Joseph. There's this tomb they discovered that they said, look, this person wasn't Egyptian. And they actually have, I'm going to photo, how he looked, supposedly.
Yeah, I heard of this.
I'll do though. And they said his, features and stuff like that wasn't of the Egyptians, and on top of that, like his name wasn't Egyptian. They call him, it says also known as Yah, it has the same kind of structure as do you call it? Joseph. Now, what else is interesting is, so I took this image and I asked the chat. Actually, it was a Mid-Journey. I said, "Hey, show me how this person could potentially look, if we reconstruct him." This is what the image you gave.
Bro,
It
that's
clearly
not
doesn't look
real.
like Egyptian.
No,
It clearly
man.
doesn't look
How
like
you get
Egyptian.
how you get Giga Chad from the mummy? Get out of here, man. That's not real.
Take it up with
Mid
Mid-Journey.
Journey.
But one
It's
thing is
just
real for sure. It doesn't look like really Egyptian. There are indications, but again, it's not solid evidence.
I mean, look at his cheekbones, though. Very distinguished jawline.
Anyway, God knows the best. But I think there's a purpose. If it was very obvious and discoveries were made, so it's easier for people to believe. But one thing is for sure, it shows, some of the pharaohs try to wipe out the previous rulers and highlight themselves and so on. So this is also possible in case of the Israelites, Moses or Joseph. But even some of the wars they were defeated, it was not depicted. They found it from other sites that there were certain wars that they were defeated. They didn't. They tried to hide it. So makes sense.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May I ask a question?
peace be upon your sister Susan. What's your question for us today?
Okay, my question is, and this is what I've heard, and I want to see if you guys can prove it. As far as the Nicene theory, that was 300 something years after Jesus. When we see the people of the cave, there was a gentleman that in the Quran that he told us that when the children of the people of the cave, when they came out of the cave, it was the same time as Muhammad, was mentioning them in the Quran. He figured it out that it was the same time, like it was happening as the verses is telling us. Can you guys prove that?
This was my understanding as well. So if we say that was 325, you add 300 solar years, right? So that's 625, and that actually it does correspond around the time period that they understand that the Torah was revealed. To me, that's one of the aspects. He's foretelling something that is happening, on the other side of the world, and isn't appreciated until someone is able to kind of like piece all these things together. So that I understand it the same way.
So this is fascinating that for several years there's an overlap, right? So these guys are revived from dead. It's 625 AD, and that's the height of Muhammad's activities in Medina, right? And he's getting ready to. They're in a bunch of battles, and he's getting ready to go back. And just think, like 1,000 miles away, the sleepers of the cave were just revived, and they're kind of doing their thing at the same time. So what's the order of Revelation? Let's take a look of chapter 18, right? This is significant.
I just put it in.
Oh, did you put it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. So 18 would be 69. Now, isn't that interesting? Then what chapter is the first? Well, let's just make sure we understand what's going on. So what chapter is the first? See, where's the first Medinan surah?
87. So it's 87. Chapter 2 is the first Medinan Torah, as understood.
Surah 2 is the first Medinan surah?
I believe so. Yeah, that's the cutoff. That's the transition.
First. Okay, so then, okay, so then it's strange because, so how would it be, it's kind of strange that it's saying this whole story, right? Is there components of the story that wouldn't, I guess we have to look at what verses are they? What verses talk about the sleepers of the cave?
Chapter 18, but
But in
worth
chapter
looking into.
18,
Yeah.
I guess
no.
how
Yeah.
it's right at the beginning too, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know because here's the I guess the problem, and we talk about this a lot, that time is not relevant to God. But so then it could be just telling us a story, as a whole. But at the time this verse is revealed, it's fair to say that this hasn't even occurred yet, right? So verse 19 and 20 of chapter 18, are we saying that this event happened before? Are we saying that this verse came down before the event even happened? That would be true, correct?
Yeah. I mean, based on those timelines, it would.
Right. So when it says, Ashajim says, when we resurrected them, they asked each other, "How long have you been here?" Right. So this narration of this verse is being narrated by the prophet before they even did this, because we're saying they did it several years later. So yeah, it's kind of those timeline, I guess, situations that we see in the Quran. Since I have Sister Farhana here, peace be upon you, Sister Farhana, are you available to speak?
You know what's interesting?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If you read 1822, it uses the future tense. They will say 3, fourth being their dog. They said 5, 6 being their dog, guessing about the unseen. It's interesting that it's using the future, like it's something. It says they will
Which
say.
verse is this?
1822.
1822?
Mm-hmm.
Some would say.
If you look at the Arabic, it's basically it's a future.
Oh, as in the future, they're going to say this. But it's
Then again,
interesting, but it says we caused them to be discovered before they're even discovered. That's weird, right? Because Muhammad is telling people, hey, we caused the God is saying that we caused the sleepers of the cave being discovered, but at this point they were not discovered yet. Are you trying to make a comment, Omer?
Yeah, I was hesitant. At their time, weren't they discovered by people? Somebody went to.
No, they were discovered several years later.
So maybe I'm just missing something, but so if we look at the footnote for 1816, that this one says they're fleeing the persecution of neo-Christians, proclaimed the corrupted Christianity 3 centuries after Jesus, following the Nicene conferences. So that would be 300, and then they stayed in the cave 300 years, so that would be 600.
No, it's 625. 325 is the Nicene Creed. Okay. And 300 years on top of that would be 625. Here we're 620 with Muhammad because he's still in Mecca. He didn't go to Medina yet. So there's no way that this can be later.
But the Nicene, the footnote says it's 3 centuries after Jesus. So that would, or did you guys find in the, where are we getting the 325?
Yeah,
Rather
so
than
if you, so
300.
that's mentioned multiple times. If you go to the appendix 22 on Jesus,
This
it
is
says that. Oh,
just the Nicene Creed. Like the date is on this one. They kind of not the final form of the Trinity, but this a lot of the major aspects of the Trinity were settled at that council.
yeah, but I'm just giving the date. So this is the first paragraph of Appendix 22. Christianity is the product of the Nicene. That's AD 325. And this is repeated over and over again. It's not just Rashad saying this. Rashad says it. That's just the history. Everyone agrees. No one disputes the date of 325 AD. That's the first council of Nicaea.
Oh, okay. I see what you posted. That's from that book, right? Or
No,
where?
that's from Appendix 22.
The one that says the 325. Christianity is a product of Nicene, AD 325.
Yeah,
That's 22.
that's Appendix 22. The books are just citations that have nothing to do with that. The books are talking about the first sentence, which says outstanding Christian scholars have reached the same conclusions, and then it cites 2 books. That's finished. The citations are over, and then afterwards, the next sentence says Christianity. This is a statement by Rashad. Christianity is the product of Nicene, 8325.
So, okay, so the Nicene conferences happened 325 then, right? And then it was
Yes.
after that that they were persecuted, and then they stated, okay, so then I see how you're getting
Yeah,
the
so there's 200 miles. Exactly, there's 200 miles they've left within the same year, and they're there for 300 years. That would put you at 625. The problem is 625 is Muhammad is in Medina, right? So in 620, Muhammad's still in Mecca. There's no way that he's in Medina. There's no way that this incident is while he's in Mecca. That's not possible. Because Muhammad stayed in Mecca for 13 years. So that'll be 610 to 623. So we're still off by a couple years. So then this is narrating this story, and I was trying to make the argument that, well, it's at the end of the chapter, so then it could come later in the Revelation, but I can't make that argument because it's right at the beginning of the chapter. So that's just what it is.
It's
With
worth.
the other one, yeah. Go ahead.
I did a quick check. So from Ephesus to Mecca, you're talking about roughly 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers. Then yeah, it seems like it is I mean, it's worth digging into if this is a future prophecy that was came just years before it actually occurred.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, for example, for chapter 2, because it's so long, right? I'm able to make the argument, well, verse 219, we don't know when that came. Yeah, it started, when the prophet first got to Medina, but what if 219, it took, verse 219, it took a year or 2 years to get to that verse. So I can stretch that out easily, right? But with this one, I can't stretch it out because it's right at the beginning of the chapter, and this is a Meccan chapter. So there's nothing for me to do. This has to be in Mecca. And so this means that the story was narrated before they were even discovered. So then that would mean the main audience is us. What's that?
So, but do we know? So it sounds like that's based on like all these series up to 87 were revealed in Mecca. Is that right? I mean, up to the 87th revelation, which is Surah 2.
Yeah. So the last surah that started in Mecca is 68. I'm sorry, 88. 88. I'm sorry, 83. I got it wrong. 83. 83 is the last surah that started in Mecca. 83.
Right. And then we know from history, like he was when he went to Medina, right? So based on that,
13 years. I mean, Rashad says it too multiple times. It's 13
It's
years.
the start of the Islamic calendar.
Yeah. The start of the Islamic calendar is 0 Hijra. AH.
Oh, okay.
So we can't, everything would be messed up if we were going to trash this calendar. We can't
Yeah,
do that.
so this should be accurate then. Yeah, so then I think that yeah, so then it seems like Quran is actually, it's a prophecy then. And I think that we can't get caught up in the tenses because it's for God, there is no, like we've got the verses about hell as if it was in the past because to God everything has already happened. So it's gonna happen. And so I think we can't get caught up in the tenses, past tense, etc. That's my thought at the moment. Thanks.
Salam alaikum. Yeah, Sister Fari, I agree with what you're saying. The footnote to Surah 14, verse 21 says frequently the Quran talks about the hereafter in the past tense. This is because those are future events already witnessed by God and will surely come to pass. So again, God is, as we know, controls of past, present, and future, but certain events are described in the Quran in the past tense, even though they may not have come forth in this world yet. Thank you.
Mashallah, thank you, Brother Douglas. And it was interesting discussion though that we that it seems like it was another prophecy in the Quran that now the tomb's been discovered, the sleepers, it's documented now that this story. Praise God.
Yeah, so uh this is interesting. So the footnote that Brother Douglas mentioned is interesting. In verse 21 of chapter 14, it says, frequently the Quran talks about the hereafter in the past tense. This is because those are future events already witnessed by God and will surely come to pass. So I don't see why this can't fall under the same category. That this is, even at the time, let's say it's going to happen in 3 years, it's in a future event that's surely going to come to pass. So they did get discovered from the cave. They did have these conversations with each other. They did interact in this way, and all this stuff happened later. But it was kind of prophesied in the Quran without even being referenced as a prophecy. That's interesting.